Hello everybody, welcome back to Inside Man United. My name is Rowan Brennan. Been gone for a few days, so for anyone that was waiting for videos, thank you very much for waiting. Sorry for the delay. Yet another loss for United, 7 now out of 10 games. And not quite panic stations because we're scoring goals and I see good patterns of play. But today's episode I want to focus on one Mr. Marcus Rashford. A hot topic, a player that divides the fan base and is dividing it even more so this season than he ever has. It's a problem and we need to look at it a little bit more closely. So, today's episode we asked the question, what the hell is going on with Marcus Rashford? I'm going to start this video with a disclaimer. I like Marcus Rashford. I think he's a good kid. I think he's a very good human being, and his work off the pitch is very commendable, hugely admirable, and sets a fine example for footballers and human beings in general everywhere. He has a very high ceiling, and on many occasions Marcus Rashford has been a superstar for the club, bailing us out of dire situations, especially last year, and showing us and the league in general and football fans the world over that this is a kid that has a very high ceiling and can go on to do great things. But I feel like United's form and Marcus's form are very synchronous on many occasions. A club and player that can so often look very good, but then all too often disappear, fall apart, and are largely ineffective. They're both symptomatic of each other, it would seem. Now, Marcus's fans will blame the club and say a succession of managers, different playing styles, different players, different formations, an insane transfer strategy, no set relationship with any sort of wide players or striker has not allowed him to flourish. But there comes a time where the excuses have to run out. United's transfer strategy has been appalling, and we haven't had a very exciting prospect come through the youth academy until this year, of course, with the group of players that have come through. But Marcus has been the beneficiary of a club that was so desperate to bring through and promote and laud a product of its academy that ever since the class of 92, we basically had Makeda and the De Silva twins break into the team with mixed results. Rafael and Fabio, of course, fan favourites, but were they overwhelming successes? Have they gone down as club legends? Would you have said their time at United was a rip-roaring success? That's up for debate. Marcus came in the 15-16 season when United had a lot of injuries up front, were struggling, and he came in for 11 games and scored 5 goals. Roughly 1 and 2. A ratio he hasn't beaten since. He has struggled for form since then. The very next season, he scored 4 goals in 35 games. The next season, it was 7. There was 3 seasons in a row where he scored double figures. 10 goals, 11 goals, and 17 goals. I want to add to that his assists have been very poor, really. He's not a man that likes to create for others. Yet is a player that doesn't want to play as the striker, wants to play as a wide player. You can't be the wide player but take all the shots. Now, you can say United have also struggled in the forward department, but we have had good players like Ibrahimovic, Cavani, Ronaldo, Lukaku, that have been target men for Rashford to feed the ball into, and he hasn't been especially good at that. Marcus has this is his 9th season. Only 4 times has Marcus Rashford got into double figures. 2 of those times it was 10 and 11 goals, so he just scraped in there. The other times where last year with 17 goals, people keep going, 30 goals. He did across all competitions, but to be honest, the only competition that I would judge the effectiveness or value of any player within United squad or any squad for that matter is the Premier League. Europa League, you're facing various quality opposition. Same with the League Cup and even the FA Cup. Now, you can only play what's in front of you, and if you bang in the goals, you're doing your job, and very well done to you. But the fact is, the only real strong litmus test to judge the quality of a player is in the Premier League, where you're playing the very best of the best on a consistent basis. And it's the tournament that we want to win. We've won the Europa League and the League Cup and the FA Cup, and we've got to finals, and we're still considered an underachieving team. The only trophy that will ever matter to Manchester United is the Premier League. And that is the only tournament that we should count when judging the quality and effectiveness of our players and our squad. Now, Marcus had a good season last season, 17 goals. You'll see it down the bottom of this episode. I have lots of statistics on goals to games ratio, assists, goal contributions, and what he has done season on season. Some of it makes for very poor reading. I have to remind you that Marcus Rashford is in his 9th season at United. One more season and he's eligible for a testimonial at the age of 25, 26 it will be next year. Commendable in some regards. Wow, a player playing at the club for 10 years or having 10 seasons and he's barely hit his peak. Very impressive in some regards. However, Marcus Rashford has survived at Manchester United because there has been so many poor performances across the squad from managers, and he's failed to hit the heights that I think were expected of him in that first maiden season. As I said, he's only hit double figures 4 times, and we're now in his 9th season. 3 seasons he has hit double figures consecutively. 10, 11, and 17. Not bad. But then the next season he goes on and scores 4 goals. And even fewer assists. This is a guy that if he's not scoring, he's not really laying it on much for other people. Now, last night we had another capitulation against Galatasaray. Now, that is a separate episode for different reasons, and our defensive crisis is something that has its own episode. Now, Marcus did very well last night in terms of he got a great assist. And I said on a previous episode, I want to see Marcus playing on the right for various reasons. Primarily because I want Garnacho to be getting more minutes on the left. It's his preferred position, and frankly, he's been more exciting there than Marcus has this season, despite having some poor performances. And he did very well there last year. Marcus, when he comes in off the right, is forced to cross. And see the cross that he laid on for Rasmus Højlund last night. It was sumptuous. It was an amazing cross. But he didn't do a whole lot else for the entire game. Yet again, he had an opportunity to score and made a great run. If he goes in, a goal and assist, that's a great game. But that's how fine the margins are in this sport. Consistently, Marcus makes bad decisions. Consistently. And that is one of the primary markers of a good player. The decisions they make. It's hard enough to have good talent and to get yourself into good positions. But ultimately, you have to execute. You have to execute good decisions. And you have to execute those decisions well. So you have to make the right choice, and you have to make sure you execute the technique that choice comes off. Whether that's a shot, a cross, a trivela, a back heel, a 1-2, whatever it is. You need to execute. So your brain needs to work, and then your body needs to follow. Marcus Rashford all too often gets that wrong. And this is something I have said and has frustrated me about Marcus Rashford for a very, very long time. Now, you can say, oh, well, which way do you want it? He was given so much shit for not squaring that ball to Højlund earlier in the season that I think he's terrified to not do it now. And he's now laying off everything. You can say, well, what do you want? You want it to shoot? You want it to pass? I want Marcus to make the right decision. And when he should be shooting, he's passing. And when he should be passing, he's shooting. Even last night when he squared that ball, it didn't need to be perfectly weighted and to actually just come perfectly in line with a striker running onto it who's also trying to shield off a defender. And you just have to thread that ball perfectly. All he had to do was beat the second defender with the ball. And I don't think it was Højlund. It was Mason Mount, or it was someone else coming into that position. Yet again, Marcus coming in off the right. I think he's more effective on the right, if I'm being honest. He played well on the left, but he's too one-dimensional on the left. He's going to play up. He's going to try and get you to commit to one side so he can cut in left and take off his shot. Players are wise to it now. They know what Marcus is going to do. And if you keep him on his left foot, he's pretty ineffective. He just is. He wants to use his right foot. And if you stop him from doing that and shepherd him out onto his left, you basically nullify the Rashford threat, which is why I prefer to see him on the right, because he can use his pace to just outrun and then get that cross in. Twice he was very effective from the right, and I want to continue seeing him play from there. Whether Ten Hag drops Anthony to put Rashford there is another question, but God knows what he's going to do now to try and experiment and get this team playing well. But goals aren't necessarily the issue for us. It's more in defence, and we'll talk about that another time. Marcus Rashford, all he had to do was give that pass sufficient weight that it beat the second defender, and then Mount could have adjusted himself, either speeding up, slowing down, going left or going right. He had so much room for adjustment that Marcus just needed to beat that second player, and he didn't. But the thing is, he shouldn't have squared it. It was a simple enough square and he executed it badly, but he probably should have taken a shot because he was on the right-hand side with his strong foot. He should have taken the shot. So not only did he make the bad decision, but then the decision he did decide to take, he executed badly. So he fucked up twice with that. I understand why people will try and defend him and say, what do you want him to do? Like, when you want him to shoot, he passes and vice versa. But the fact is, just be honest with yourselves. Anytime you see a player bearing down on goal, internally you'll be like, shoot, or you'll be like, pass it, square it, look at your man, blah, blah, blah. Because obviously we get the benefit of seeing an eagle-eye view of the pitch. We get to see all the different options. You know, they don't get to see that. But internally, you will have an opinion on what you think the player should do. Shoot, cut in, lay it off, 1-2, pass. We all have these little inner dialogues in our head of what we think the player should do when they're bearing down on goal. And honestly, the amount of times Rashford does the complete opposite as to what I say in my own head is alarming. It's almost like flicking a coin, calling what you think it would be, and it's the opposite 50 times in a row. It just statistically is so improbable, yet it happens. And that's what I feel happens with Marcus Rashford. It blows my mind. Marcus Rashford's goals to games ratio is not that good. He scores 1 goal every 3.5 games. That's on average between 10 and 11 goals a season. You go, yeah, well, that's not bad. Bukayo Saka got 13 goals last season and 11 assists. Marcus got 17 goals and 5 assists. In fact, some outlets say he got 16 goals. I don't know what the disparity or the discrepancy is between those different outlets, but it's between 16 and 17. But for the sake of the argument, let's round it up and give him 17. Okay? Scored a few more goals than Saka, granted. But Saka scores those goals when there's also goal threat from somewhere else. Marcus Rashford was the only outlet for goals in that team last season. We had no striker. We had Wout Weghorst, who couldn't hit snow off a rope. We had Anthony Martial, who was injured all season. We had Jadon Sancho, who has been poor since he's joined the club. Anthony, who was trying to find his feet and just getting used to the league and also being largely ineffective. And Bruno wasn't really chipping in with many goals or assists last season. He was pretty average on both. I think he got 8 goals and 8 assists. And Bruno's form has fallen off a cliff, despite the work rate and how good he can be. That's another video that I'm going to do, so keep an eye out for that. Marcus Rashford took it upon himself to score 1/3 of United's goals. United scored, I think, 54, 55 or 56 goals last season. I'm not quite sure. He scored 1/3 of United's goals. And thank God he did. And Marcus so often looked the hero because United won many games 1-0 last season. Last season was won off the back of Marcus Rashford basically scoring everything that he took as a shot at. And we were very mean defensively. United's defensive performance last year is what got us to 3rd. We conceded 43 goals, which in and of itself isn't that impressive, but it's a hell of a lot better than what it's been in previous seasons. 17 of those goals came in 3 games. The 6 against City, the 7 against Liverpool, and 4 against Brentford. And there was a few 3 and 2-0s in there, but they're pretty standard. But the outlying kind of, standout shit performances was those 3 games. 17 goals in 3 games. Such is the way United play. When it doesn't work and we fall apart in a big way. And it's an absolute, we get bent over. Okay, that's what happens to this team sometimes. But for 35 games last season, United conceded 26 goals. That is a Premier League winning defensive record. Look at United's defensive statistics in even our pomp during Ferguson's time. We would concede anywhere between the late 20s to the late 30s in goals. And that is us being dominant with a very good defence and goalkeeper. So to have 26 goals shipped, or 27 goals shipped in 38 games, is league-winning defence. Absolutely, 100%. However, we didn't score enough goals. We won many games 1-0. We had a lot of 0-alls, a lot of 1-1s as well. But Ten Hag had a 73% win record last year, a phenomenally good record, and anyone clamouring for Ten Hag to go or be fired is a fool. You're a fool. Well, what are we supposed to do now? Look at Ferguson's first few seasons. Look at Guardiola's. Look at Klopp's. Look at Arteta's. He deserves a hell of a lot more time than this, particularly given the circus that surrounded the club, both in terms of Ronaldo saga, Anthony saga, Greenwood saga, takeover talk, the sale, and then numerous injuries to key personnel in every department of the pitch. No one could manage this club. Guardiola couldn't get us through this. So let's not destroy Ten Hag. You can see the possession and the patterns of play. You can see the goals that are being scored. We're starting to kind of put things together. He now has a striker who looks to actually be mustard. But we've got a defence that's absolutely held together with blue tack and sellotape, with players being played wildly out of position, a new midfield signing playing at left back, right backs playing at left backs, and fringe players who he wanted gone, having to come in to deputise to injuries to our defensive partnership from last year, which was Martinez and Varane, both of whom are perennially unavailable because of injury. And then a goalkeeper, mind you, that is Ten Hag's purchase, that hasn't really started all that well. Now, there are certainly things Ten Hag needs to take responsibility for, but that, again, is a separate video. Marcus Rashford benefited from a very mean defence, and he came out the hero because he'd scored the only goal. And rightly so, good for him. But he doesn't do it often enough season after season. Too many people use the word world-class far too often. Marcus Rashford is not a world-class player. He has shown world-class ability. And this is again a problem with Manchester United. We're too quick to reward flashes of brilliance. There is no way that Anthony Martial should be on £250,000 given how poor and inconsistent his form has been for 8 or 9 years. Same goes for Luke Shaw. In 8 or 9 seasons, how many of them have been good? 2? Last year and another season before he got injured. He's had 2.5 seasons, I'd say, where he has been good. And last season, he was one of the best left backs in the league. But in 8 seasons, he's been up and down. In the beginning of this season, before he got injured, he didn't look great. In pre-season, certainly. And then Marcus Rashford, he had 2 shit seasons before last year, to the extent where people wanted him gone, sold, he's just not up to it. Then he steps up to the plate, like he does every now and again, bangs in a few goals, and we slap 350 grand on the table. So bad has United's transfer strategy and policy been for 10 years. Can you name more than 4 players that have been reasonably successful in terms of transfer? There's been Bruno Fernandes, who's starting to wane, but undoubtedly the best signing we've had post-Fergie. Dan James, purely for the fact that we sold him for a profit. Raphael Varane, because he was world class. We got him for 40 million quid at the age of 29. So on paper, looked like a great signing. But has he been great? He had a good season last season. He's now in his 4th season and he's injured again. Can he be really deemed as a successful signing? I don't think so. And Ibrahimovic, who came in and did very well and brought a level of professionalism and swagger and confidence. And we've had our most successful season post-Fergie when we had a 35-year-old Ibrahimovic leading the line. Himself and Pogba started to kind of develop a partnership. That's 4 signings in 10 years. And 2 of those signings are up for debate. One because we turned a profit. Dan James wasn't a success. And then Varane, still up for debate. So Ibrahimovic and Bruno Fernandes are the only signings post-Fergie, pre-Ten Hag, that have been in any way decent. Everything else has been a monumental failure. Every single player has been a failure. Every single one. If I'm wrong, please leave in the comments a player that you think has been a success outside of those 2 and those, brackets 4. So bad has our transfer strategy been, and so many failures have we had to put up with, that any player that manages to have half a good season or a good season, we slap a bloated contract on the table for fear of losing them, because we need to keep them, because we're not a very good team, because we're barely scraping top 4 every other season. Marcus Rashford got 17 goals last year. 30 goals in all competitions, fine. 17 in the league, okay? He was 6th in the Golden Boot list. He had Callum Wilson, Ivan Toney, Mo Salah, Erling Haaland, Harry Kane, all above him. He was our golden boy last year. He was 6th in the league. Thanks, Marcus. There's 350 grand. Let's forget about the 2 seasons beforehand where you were absolutely stink. Anthony Martial on £250,000. When did he last have a good season? 5 years ago? And he's still at the club on £250,000. Luke Shaw has had 2.5 good seasons in 8. And this is what we do as a club. Luke Shaw, despite having played so well last year, he would never have been given the chance to play like that last year because he would have been fucked out of Manchester City. There's no way. Look at Manchester City, okay? They had Aymeric Laporte, a Spanish international, one of the best centre-backs in the league for years. João Cancelo, widely considered to be the best left-back in the league. Absolutely staggering numbers. Both sold without a blink of an eye. If they were at United, United would be falling over themselves to keep those players. Please don't leave us. We're still a big club. They would have thrown 300 grand a week on the table. Please don't leave us. And Guardiola's like, yeah, you're gone. They just win a treble. They spend 80 million quid on Vardio when they already have Akanji, Ake, Stones, Ruben Diaz, Kyle Walker, Rico Lewis. And I'm sure I'm forgetting others. Now they've got Vardio. And there's definitely a couple of others that I've forgotten there. That is the sign of champions. Do you think United would have allowed Ilkay Gundogan or Riyad Mahrez to leave? They would have just been like, here's 400 grand a week, here's 350 grand, we can't lose them. City are like, yeah, no worries. Yeah, no, we'll replace you because we've built a good machine. We're a well-run club and we've got tactics and flexibility to allow multiple players to come in. They handle a bloated fixture list because they have 2, sometimes 3 players. United have been awful this season with injury luck. Marcus Rashford does not get into Manchester City's team. Full stop. He doesn't get into the first 11, and I dare I say it, I don't think he'd make the bench. I just don't. I don't think he gets in ahead of Julian Alvarez or Phil Foden or Jack Grealish or Bernardo Silva, Erling Haaland. He just doesn't. He doesn't get ahead of those players. He doesn't get into the Liverpool first 11. He just doesn't. I think Diogo Jota and Luis Diaz are actually far more consistent than he is. And stop judging Rashford off last year's league performance. The kid's now in his 9th season. He's hit double figures 4 times, 2 of which have been 10 and 11. His assists are low, and his highest scoring season ever in 8 seasons is 17, which is good, but it's not great. Heung-min Son, wide player, banging in 20 plus goals when he's on form. Mo Salah, 30 plus goals when he's on form. Wide players can be expected to score 20 plus goals, particularly ones that are expected to be paid 350 grand a week. He can't make it into the England side, and rightly so. He should be behind Jack Grealish and Bukayo Saka. He should be. He's not good enough to play in the first team there. He just isn't. Marcus Rashford is symptomatic of a wider problem at the club, which is mediocrity and flashes of high ceilings being rewarded. Now, I don't know what Eric Ten Hag has to do with Marcus Rashford. Play him into form or allow himself to play himself out of the first 11 so it is undeniable that he should be dropped. Now, what do United do? Do they stifle Garnacho's development to see if they can still get one good season every 3 seasons from Marcus Rashford? Big questions need to be asked. He's a confidence player, and on his day, he's great. It's like being in an abusive relationship when you have these kind of players, because, you know, they're only good 10 or 20% of the time, but we seem to fixate on those 10, 20% and forget about the 80%, which is awful. But we keep them around because we just can't bear the idea of them doing the good 20% with someone else. We just accept that, oh, if only we could. And we've done that with so many players. Pogba, Shaw, De Gea, Martial, Rashford, Bruno, McTominay, Wan-Bissaka, Varane. So many players where we see flashes and we go, oh, maybe. But let's keep them around just in case. That doesn't happen at City. That doesn't happen at Liverpool. It's not accepted. But United are so bad in the transfer window, God knows what they're going to bring through next. And that could be a downgrade on the player they even got rid of, which we're now seeing with Onana with De Gea. It's tough territory now for Ten Hag with Marcus Rashford. He's got 1 goal in 7 games now in the Premier League, which is averaging, he's going to score 5 or 6 goals for the season. Hopefully he goes on a run. I want to see him get 20 assists this season. I want to see him turn into provider as opposed to taking the goal scoring burden onto himself. But if he has another bad season this season, there will have to be serious thought given to selling Marcus Rashford, because we cannot keep waiting for this guy to decide when he wants to play well. When if you have got designs on winning the Premier League and or the Champions League, you have to be turning in performances that are 7 out of 10 minimum 70 to 80% of the time. That's what Man City's players do. That's what we're up against. That's what Munich players do. That's what, Real Madrid and Barcelona now, their players do. Especially in the forward line. Every team can have 11, good players. You can have 8 very good players carry 2 or 3 average players. Ray Parlour, John O'Shea, Nicky Butt, these kind of players, they're good players, but they can be carried. They do a job, they're good players, they'd be very good players in other teams, but they're not quite up to the world-class standard of other players in your starting 11. You can carry them. Marcus Rashford in the 08 team, Marcus Rashford does not get into that team. Not even close. He doesn't get into many of the successful United squads. And when you look at who was there instead. But he's there now, and look where we're performing. Serious questions are going to have to be asked of Marcus Rashford. If at the end of this season he's in single figures for goals and assists, serious questions are going to have to be asked as to whether or not he should be sold. He cost us nothing. It would do wonders for our FFP. It would allow the likes of Garnacho to flourish, and we can use that money to strengthen and bolster other areas of the pitch. Bring in Evan Ferguson. Bring in other players that we think can do a better job. Bring in Kaoru Matoma. Bring in Son. Bring in James Maddison. These are all players that I would have ahead of Marcus Rashford at the moment. What are your thoughts? Leave a comment. I mean, do you think this is unfair? Do you think there's merit to what I'm saying? Should he play on the left? Should he play on the right? Should he be dropped? What do we do with Marcus Rashford? Leave your comments. Hit like, hit subscribe. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll see you on the next one.